Hey, how's it going? Well, it's demo time once again as Steam's Next Fest for June has just wrapped up. One day I might actually get the video out while the event is still on. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Anyway, as usual, there was an overwhelming amount of cool looking games to check out. This one supposedly had around 1700, which is simply too many, isn't it? I'm just one man. I couldn't possibly play all of them, even if I wanted to. I did manage to play quite a few though, and came up with the idea to showcase 5 of the weirder ones in this video. These are games that caught my eye due to how straight up bizarre and different they looked compared to everything else, and I came away pretty excited for all of them. And I reckon there's a good chance you've not seen a few of these before, so hey, you might even find something new that you like the look of too. If that does happen, don't forget to go and wishlist them, as it really helps the devs out. Alright, cool, let's get into it.
By the sea dew and the thaw, by the first days of creation, by the victory of dreams that dinna pass.
First up is Judero, which is an action-adventure game based on the rich folklore of the Scottish borders. And let's start with the obvious. The way this game looks is crazy, isn't it? The devs have noted that they used a selection of handcrafted objects and figurines to make it look this way, and they animated it all using stop motion, with the goal being to give the game a nostalgic feeling, along with it all being a bit weird and unsettling. And after playing through the demo, I kinda think they've nailed what they were going for. There's all sorts of mad things in here, like Judero being an action figure of all things, and then the NPCs and enemies being made out of what looks like plasticine and various other bits and bobs. All this gives the game a unique look that I've never really seen before. From what I could gather about the story, the main man Judero is on a journey to discover the source of an evil that's tainting the land and its people. To do this, he will have to explore the world, solve puzzles, fight his way through monsters, and offer to help the locals out by completing various side quests and mini games. Simply talking to each NPC was a bit of a joy in itself due to how mad they all were. I mean, look at the state of this lass's plasticine head here. What a mess. Most of the characters were also fully voiced, with some funny performances to go along with it too.
Even though I leave, I will ever be in your service. How can I forget the horrors of that donkey skin curse?
And while I'm on about the audio, the way they've gone about implementing music is super interesting as well. The devs have noted that the songs used in the game are an homage to British folk music. Before making the music, they researched and learned about old songs, some of which are supposedly hundreds of years old, which is just cool, isn't it?
I heard a birdie singing in my chamber as I lay, the casement open swinging as morning woke the day.
Moving on to the gameplay, Judero is able to attack, use combos and dash out of harm's way. At first, I found it quite difficult to get the hits in without receiving damage myself. I think this was because of the weird way the enemies move around due to the stop motion and that, but I did eventually get a bit better at it as the demo went on. I also liked how each new enemy had its own entrance video, and they all have great names such as Haggis and Spitting Haggis. An interesting wrinkle in the game's combat is Judero's possession ability. This lets him essentially take over enemies and use their moves to attack each other and to solve environmental puzzles. One example of using it for puzzle solving was this part where I noticed a chest in the top left corner of the area that was blocked off by these vines. Judero's standard attacks were unable to reach them, but I was able to possess a nearby Spitting Haggis. As their name implies, these things fire projectiles which allowed me to attack the distant target and remove the vines, which opened the way to the chest. There are also boss fights in the game that Judero will need to overcome. In the demo I found these two-headed fellas called Gregor and Calvin McKinley who needed putting in the place. This was a decent fight with the boss using a variety of different attacks that I had to dodge through in order to get close and chip away at the health. The best thing about this fight though was the music. Have a listen to this. And that's how my time with the demo ended. I beat the boss and got stuck in the boss room and couldn't leave, but it didn't really matter. I sort of expected the demo to end here anyway, and I was already sold on the game. There's currently no release date for Judero, there's not even a year on its store page yet, but I'm hoping it won't be too far away.
And that was River Form, the tale of darkness, born of light.
Next up, we have Threshold, which is a strange little first-person exploration game I've had my eye on for a few months now. This is being created by a solo dev who has worked at studios such as Crytek and Arcane on games like Hunt and Dishonored 2, so you know this thing is in good hands.
Hey!
This demo was set up like a prologue to the main game that serves as an introduction to the world of Threshold, where you play as a different character on the first day on the job. Before I even got into the game itself, I was asked to pick a country, so of course I selected my local hellscape, the UK, and instantly felt right at home. This choice apparently influences the difficulty of the main game, and after playing this thing I'd imagine it does some other stuff that's not explicitly stated as well. At the start of the demo, I exited a lift and met this guy. He writes a note and hands it to me which says his name is Mo. He then continues to write more notes and it becomes readily apparent that this is how people interact in this place, which is fairly odd. And it turns out that the border post is very high up in the mountains, and because of this, the oxygen levels are very low. So to conserve it, people interact by passing notes to each other, and it only gets weirder from here. There's a never-ending train running through the place, a huge border wall nobody is allowed to cross, crates of oxygen canisters with creepy teeth marks on them scattered everywhere, an ominous giant horn that I wasn't allowed to use, something that I can only assume is a corpse in the back of this room I couldn't get into, and oh yeah, all the trees were fake for some reason. Helping to tie all this strangeness together is the game's PS1 style graphics that even has the weird texture warping and wobble effect going on like the old games used to have, which is a nice detail, or I guess lack of detail, I don't know. The game has a really uncomfortable and oppressive atmosphere, and it looking like this really helps sell the whole thing. The rest of the demo consisted of me walking around and checking things out with the ever helpful Mo handing me notes and explaining what each thing was. As it went on, I noticed that my character's vision would go blurry every now and then and the sides of the screen darkened, which I guess is linked to their oxygen running out. Eventually, Mo handed me one of those creepy oxygen canisters. I go to use it and the demo was over. This was only a short experience at around 5 minutes long, but I think it did its job well. It certainly got me intrigued as to what the hell was going on in this place, and I'm eager to see more. The main game will feature stuff like maintaining the border crossing, keeping the train running, and staying topped up on oxygen while I presume weird shit goes down. And if that's the case, then I'm all in. There's currently no release date for Threshold, but it's coming soon, so hopefully I can get back to huffing on more air cans before it's too late. Alright, well, what the hell do I say about this next one, bloody hell. This is Elation for the Wonderbox 6000, and if you thought the previous games in this video looked a bit weird, trust me, you ain't seen nothing yet. I only heard about this game about a week ago, but the trailer was so insane that when I saw it had a demo, I just had to check it out for myself to see what the crack was. And I suppose the best place to start would be to have a look at the opening, so here we go. I don't know what the hell the devs are going for here, but if making the player feel like they are trapped in a nightmare was one of the goals, I'd say they are doing a fine job of it. Apparently, this is a first-person adventure game about going into the city to try and find a game from your youth that no one else remembers. The demo had me exploring this house and interacting with things along with speaking to the man that lives in the walls. That's not a normal thing to say, is it? But it's things like this that you sort of just have to go with in this game, it seems. Clicking on seemingly mundane things like the bloody toilet for instance would have a humorous bit of text attached to it, and I could see the whole game being full of this kind of thing. Moving on to the visuals, because yeah, this is perhaps the chunkiest and most pixelated looking game on this list. but it is doing some cool stuff with it. The dev has mentioned that it has thousands of frames of clay animation in it, and the faces somehow managed to look even more messed up than that poor lass's in Judero's did. There are other delightfully weird visual choices in here too, such as when you get in a conversation with someone or look in your inventory. The UI sort of slithers onto the screen in a really off-putting way. I mean, what am I even looking at here? It's metallic, but it's also writhing around. It's just wrong. After pissing around in the house for a bit, I eventually left and found that I was stuck in a barren wasteland surrounded by factories on every side. I don't remember choosing the UK like I did in Threshold, but there we are. After this, I started to walk away from the house down a long path while the controls for the game were introduced like it was a movie or something. I just don't even know what to say anymore, but the tune that started playing did sound pretty good, I'll give it that. And yeah, that's about all the demo had to offer. It was another short one at around 5 minutes, but I gotta be honest, I've never really played a game that's as out there as this seemed to be, so I'm intrigued to see where the hell it goes. There's no release date for Elation for the Wonderbox 6000 yet, but it's got Q4 2024 on its Steam page, so I guess it'll be out towards the end of the year. Yay, I think. This next one is called Mouthwashing, and I'm not 100% sure it was part of June 2024's Next Fest specifically, but what the hell, it's one that's been on my wishlist for a while now, and it had a demo and that, so here we are. This is a first-person horror game that follows the dying crew of a shipwrecked space freighter. The 5 crew members of the Tulpar have become stranded in the empty reaches of space due to their captain trying to kill himself and take them all with him, which is not an ideal situation, is it? And even though the captain manages to succeed in messing the ship up, tragically and perhaps ironically, he fails to kill himself and is still alive. And I say alive, but I mean look at him. He's burnt, missing limbs and unable to speak. So he's not exactly the picture of health, is he? What's interesting about this though is that it means the rest of the crew are stuck looking after the guy that doomed them all, which to me is a pretty great setup for a horror story. And while looking after the captain, the crew will have to contend with managing the supplies of the ship and trying to keep hold of the sanity, both of which seem to be quickly running out. This demo was pretty trippy as it had me playing as a few different members of the crew at different points in time. It started out with me being in control of the good captain himself, and then as another character called Jimmy. The captain section felt a bit like a dream sequence with him being trapped in this unsettling, repeating corridor that got more messed up the longer it went on, PT style. Jimmy's section took up most of the demo and had me exploring different sections of the ship as I looked for a scanner that could reveal a code to open the cargo hold. I was also able to interact with the rest of the crew during this part, and even though it was brief, they all seemed like well developed characters with their own motivations and problems. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they all change over the course of the game. Jimmy also seemed to be plagued with visions and his own dream sequences. The game's presentation is also great. It looks like a long lost PS1 game or something, and there's a surprising amount of detail in the character models and the ship. And really, I just kind of like how games like Threshold and this are exploring PS1/N64 styles of graphics now. There's a lot of potential for interesting visuals there, I think. I've always thought that lower quality graphics like these are a perfect fit for horror games. This might be due to me growing up with them and being scared shitless of stuff like Resident Evil and that, but who knows. Bit of a tangent there, but yeah, overall, this demo really impressed me. The setup is interesting, the characters and ship seemed well realised, and there was a horrible sense of dread and uneasiness hanging over the whole thing. I'm looking forward to seeing how everything plays out and how bad it gets for everyone involved when I play the full game. There's currently no release date for Mouthwashing, but it's coming soon, so hopefully it's not too far away. And last but by no means least, we have GRUNN, which is a first-person gardening adventure game. In this game, you play as a gardener, believe it or not, who has been hired to do some maintenance work on a garden deep in the Dutch countryside. You can cut the grass, water the flowers, pick up trash, smash things to bits, and other gardenery type stuff, but it quickly becomes apparent all is not what it seems. As you play, you start to realise that most of your tools are missing, the owner of the garden is nowhere to be found, staying out after dark is forbidden, and perhaps worst of all, yeah, somebody's stalking you. So this is much more than your standard simulator type of game, and there's actually quite a lot going on in this. The demo started with me being dropped off outside the garden by bus, and when I tried to talk to the driver, I apparently couldn't understand a word he was saying, which is a great start, isn't it? Also, check this guy out, what a face that is. There's been some mad faces in this video, hasn't there, dearie me. In general though, I love the way this game looks, it's proper cool and weird. It's like someone has forced a watercolour filter over old camcorder footage or something. Due to the way it looks, it's kinda hard to make things out in the distance, so even if someone is following you around, you're not really going to be able to see them right away. After leaving the bus, I made my way towards the garden and spotted an ominous Polaroid picture next to the bridge door, which showed a key hidden in a nearby flower patch. I go and get that, open the door, and make my way over the bridge only to hear a snap behind me. I got to investigate that and discover that one of the bridge planks has inexplicably gone missing, and what's this? Another Polaroid, this time pointing to a van. As I continued to play, I found more of these Polaroids hidden around the garden, and they all seem to point towards objects and areas of interest that help me to progress. The garden is full of locked doors and sealed off areas, and I think one of the goals is to get all this stuff open in order to get your tools, figure out what's going on, and ultimately get this garden sorted out. You can keep track of how much of each section of the garden you've maintained by the percentage in the bottom right corner of the screen, and I think that certain events are also tied to this as well. Getting to a certain percentage seemed to cause things to happen. Along with all this, you also need to keep track of the time in the top right. It ticks by surprisingly fast, and you only have 3 days to get the garden sorted, so there's no time to waste. On my first time playing, I got a bit carried away with cutting the grass and that, and tried to cut as much as I could. Before I knew it, it was night time and the darkness was closing in around me. Looking back at this footage, I saw that I actually got a prompt that said, "It's time to go to bed," but I totally missed it because I was so zoned out cutting the grass. Anyway, getting caught in the dark actually resulted in me dying and was apparently one of 5 possible endings in the demo. With this new information, I started the demo again to see if I could make any more progress. This time I focused on quickly following the Polaroids, finding items and unlocking as much as I could. When night time came, I retreated to my cabin and got my head down. And yeah, I was able to continue making progress the following day. After some more exploring, I somehow stumbled into this seemingly never-ending corridor with this thing in it. Yeah, not ideal. It was at this point that I stopped playing the demo, but I could have happily continued and found the other 3 endings. I'd just been sold on what I'd seen so far and was more than happy to wait for the full thing, which will feature more areas to explore, more secrets to discover and more endings to find. I'm looking forward to seeing what other mysteries await in the garden and finding out what the heck is going on. There's currently no release date for GRUNN, but it launches sometime in 2024, so hopefully it will be out soonish. And with that, we're at the end of the list. One of the reasons I enjoy Next Fest so much is because it lets me try all kinds of weird and wonderful looking games like these that I might not have ever played. Hopefully you saw something interesting too, and if you did, don't forget to wishlist and go check the demos out for yourself. Even though June's Next Fest has finished now, many games keep the demos up for a few days and sometimes weeks after, so it's always worth checking if they're still available to download. I might have another video coming out soon, depending on a few things. I'm not promising anything, but there's been one Next Fest demo in particular that I've enjoyed so much that I might put something together to talk about it. Anyway, if that sounds good and you enjoyed this video, maybe leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. Not only would that make you very cool, at least to me anyway, but it would also really help me out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Cheers!